Good morning po, Dr. Rico. Allow me to present to you our group presentation concerning the creation Psalms, specifically Psalms 8 and 19. This is Brother Archie Magaraw, the leader and the presenter of the group. The mood of Psalm 8 is basically praising the Creator as it is a hymn of praise. And here the psalmist is praising God for His divine providence to the entire creation. Now, as regards to the main theme of the psalm, it is basically dealing with the exaltation of the grandeur of God and the greatness He bestowed on creation. As regards the structure of Psalm 8, it's basically divided into three parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Introduction starts with verse 2, wherein the psalmist praises Yahweh's name. It is followed by the body, starting with verse 3, ending in verse 9, wherein the psalmist shows 5 reasons for praising God, and his 5 reasons are the following: that first, God had established a strong protection in verse 3. Second, that God set the moon and the stars in verse 4. Third, that God cares for human beings in verse 5. Fourth, that God crowned human beings with glory and honor, which is in verse 6. And lastly, that God gave human beings rule over the works of His hands, found in verse 7. Finally, in the conclusion, which is found in verse 10, it likewise serves as an inclusio, for it is quite similar to the introduction verse, which is verse 2, as again here the psalmist praises the name of Yahweh. Please allow me now to move to discussing Psalm 19, and let me start with the mood. The psalm is basically a mixture of hymn of praise, the Torah, and penitence. It likewise expresses joy, trust, and penitence about one's sin. As to the main theme of Psalm 19, besides carrying a general theme of creation, it also has 3 sub-themes, basically praising God's glory and providence, believing God's command, and asking God's forgiveness. As to Psalm 19's structure, it has 3 parts. The first part is from verse 2 to 7, wherein the psalmist praises God's glory and providence to creation. The second part, which is from verse 8 to 12, deals with believing God's law. And here, the psalmist presents 6 elements of God's command. First, the law of the Lord is perfect in verse 8a. Second, the decree of the Lord is trustworthy in verse 8b. Third, the precepts of the Lord are right, found in verse 9a. Fourth, the command of the Lord is clear, found in verse 9b. Fifth, the fear of the Lord is pure, found in verse 10a. And lastly, the statutes of the Lord are true, found in verse 10b. The last part, which is also the third part, covers from verses 13 to 15, wherein the psalmist begs God's forgiveness and mercy. And he also ends here in complete trust to God, wherein he says that God is my rock and redeemer. That's all po. Maraming salamat po for your time and for listening to our presentation. God bless po.